Do you like testimonies of overcoming? Saved and Strong shares stories of people who have overcome struggles to find strength. Each episode inspires resilience, hope, and faith, reminding listeners they're not alone.
Hi, this is Carrie Watts with the Saved and Strong podcast. I'm here with my friend and author, Dr. Shelley Kemp. Shelley, I'm so glad that you're here today with us.
Hey, Carrie, thanks for having me.
Shelley is a certified mindfulness coach, author, motivational speaker, people and culture expert, and corporate trainer. She helps early professionals struggling with uncertainty overcome unproductivity so they can live intentionally, walk with purpose, and tackle change with kingdom confidence. I love that. All right,
Yes.
Shelley, tell us about your new book, The Pivot Principle. When changing direction happens, 5 daily habits needed to manage change, slay chaos, and create lasting peace. And I told Shelley I would show y'all a picture of her book, and you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Walmart.com, all the places where you get books online. So yes, tell us all about it.
So the Pivot Principle, it started out as kind of a memoir, not of myself, but something that happened to my son. And he was in an accident. And what we learned from that accident was really a daily routine that helped us deal with so much uncertainty and the chaos that ensued, the day of and the week after the accident. And I learned that you could apply this daily routine to anything. So it helps professionals if they're, battling with uncertainty in their jobs, or maybe they're just feeling complacent, in their jobs. Maybe they're bored and their productivity has fallen. Or in your personal life, if you're going through a lot of change and you need something to anchor you so that you can move through that change with a lot more confidence and grace for yourself in managing what's uncertain, in your future. And so this routine that we created for ourselves has really turned into a movement. And I've been teaching the routine now for about 7 years to small women's groups. I mentor a lot of early career professionals, and then I teach through conferences and at the University of Memphis. So I'm always talking about the pivot routine and the pivot principle. And it's just a way for people to better manage chaos, change, and uncertainty.
And you're in Memphis.
I am the home of the Blues and the Memphis
Yeah,
Grizzlies.
I love it. You're close to me. We're only about 3 hours apart. That's awesome.
Yes, yes. April 20th here in Memphis. I'll be at an independent bookstore called Novel Memphis. It is the best bookstore here in Memphis. They've got a little restaurant attached and a bar and a tea area. So we'll have a huge book launch there on April 20th. So exciting.
Congratulations. Okay,
Thank
for all
you.
our listeners, this will definitely go out before April 20th. Y'all go see Shelley at
Yes,
Novel
yes.
Memphis. Yeah. Okay, so what time is that?
Yeah, it starts at 6 o'clock. It is the perfect after work soiree. It's the perfect after work thing for you to do. It'll end by 7 or 7:30. You get your book. I'm going to be interviewed by a host. She is Loretta McNary, and she is the CEO and media specialist with the Loretta McNary Network. She's the first Black woman to have her own TV network on cable TV. And so she's going to be interviewing me at Novel Memphis and we're going to share stories back and forth. And it's going to be a fun night. It's going to be a fun night. You can pick up my book. You can pick up other books. You can meet a lot of people. It's just going to be a really fun activity.
Well, good. I hope it goes well. I know you're going to have lots of opportunities to sell books, but when you can sell books in your own little hometown with people that's exciting.
Yes.
Yes. Well, this is called the Saved and Strong podcast. So I love to hear about my guest faith journey. And so when did you realize that God was actively shaping your life story?
I consider myself a late bloomer. I grew up in the church and I walked down the red aisle to go get saved and get baptized when I was a young girl, but I really didn't know, what I was committing to. And I really didn't have that relationship with God that others may have had, when they got baptized. So even though I got baptized at an early age, I was 28 before I really embraced my salvation and recommitted myself to Jesus. So I was considered 28. Jesus really picked me up and saved me for all the wonderful things that were happening in my 20s. My 20s were also very challenging and fraught with a lot of bad decisions. And so 28 is when really he called me and said, "Okay, Shelley, I have given you free will. You have done whatever you wanted to do, and I've let you do it, and I've let you be safe while you do it. But it is time for you to do something better." And so I remember I was a district manager for a sales company in a mall, and I was working at a store one day visiting, and three ladies walked up to me in the mall and they introduced me to themselves and they said, "Do you know who Jesus is?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And they said, "Great. You want to come to church with us?" And that was kind of the beginning of my wake up call with Jesus. And from there, um, things just got better and better and better because my relationship deepened with Jesus and I was able to really reconcile who I was and what I was meant to be and where I was meant to go in life uh, between the ages of 28 and 29. And I really did, a 180 from where I was at. And it was an honor and a privilege to do that. By the time I was 30, I was reunited with the love of my life, so I thought. So I got married and eventually had Anthony, my son, and things were great. That's how I got reintroduced and really saved and understood, what my salvation was.
Yeah. And most people, I feel like, make that commitment again as they get older because that childlike faith is so sweet. And of course, children want to have a friend like Jesus. But then the reality sets in and we realize, yeah, we just thought we needed Jesus. We really need Jesus. I was telling this to my son the other day. I was like, I memorized Psalm 23 when I was in third grade.
Yeah,
And I just pictured, like Jesus as the shepherd taking care of his sheep and, oh, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. When you're a child, the valley of the shadow is death is like not getting what you want, you
right.
know, until something, traumatic or a crisis happens, then you realize, oh, that's that valley of the shadow of death. Yeah, I do need to lay down in some green pastures with my savior, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, many people share a moment when their faith was tested. Was there a season in your life when you had to rely on God more deeply than ever before?
Absolutely. So I mentioned, got married to the love of my life then and had Anthony and like so many couples, we went through a lot of hard times and to be very honest, we grew apart. We had opposite schedules. He worked nights, I worked days. So, you're two just passing ships, right? And you don't see each other and we literally grew apart and I prayed I prayed right through that season. And when that season ended, I was surprised because I thought, but I prayed. I prayed. It was supposed to get better. And what I realize now, and I realized soon after, maybe a couple of years after, is that he did answer my prayers. It may not have been in the package that I wanted because I thought it was going to be reconciliation, right? I thought it was going to be that family forever. He still did something miraculous and beautiful with that family. He gave me Anthony. I never, ever, ever thought that I would be a mom. It just wasn't on my radar. And so when I was pregnant and I did have a baby, that in itself was such a gift. He knew exactly what he was doing. And so when I left that season, that marriage, I still had Anthony, I had my son, and I still had his family. His family loved me to death, and I just had to work through, okay, why did that happen? Why it's not it is that he let it happen, right? But he also gave me what I wanted. I said I wanted that man, right? He gave me that man, and he let me do so many things. But in the end, as I prayed through it, he gave me exactly what I was looking for, which was a new life. I said, I want this type of house. I want to be in a neighborhood where there are cookie cutter houses. That's what I want. And I want a backyard and I want dogs and I want Anthony and I just want us to be happy. He gave me all of that. It just happened to not be with him. So when that season ended, and I had a new prayer like, "Oh my goodness, what am I gonna do now?" He gave me something new, and about a year later, I met my somebody new, and we've now been married for 15 years, and he's such a godly man, and he's so good for me. He holds me accountable, and he's my Paul, or he's my Timothy, or, he's my Matthew whenever I might be making the wrong decisions or I might be thinking the wrong way. So my husband has truly been a godsend. And so I'm glad, God took me through the valley, but along that valley, he planted flowers. And so when I came out of the valley, I could look back, I could see the flowers, and I could see that he was doing something new for me. And it's been wonderful. It's wonderful when you're where you need to be, right?
Mhm.
And so I know that I'm exactly where I need to be, who I need to be with. The family that I have now is beautiful and wonderful in all its imperfections. It's just a true gift from God, and every day is a good day.
Good. Thank you
And
for sharing. God's got a plan. He sees the big picture that we can't see, and
he
it sounds
does.
like your husband is very wise.
He is. Yeah.
Well, you've walked through moments of fear, uncertainty, and change. How did those experiences strengthen your relationship with?
It has enabled me to trust him more because I've always been able to come out of the situation that had me anxious or had me fearful, or I've been able to observe others who were in a situation where things could have been fearful for them. We live in a society now where the economy is not great for everybody. And so we hear layoffs happen all the time, or, people's jobs are being outsourced. And my family is no different. We have been hit with layoffs probably every other year or every 3 years. And so we have had to trust God to pull us through all of those situations. And he has. That's the beautiful thing, is that we're able to communicate to him, we're able to pray and tell him, what our fears are and give him our fears, and then just walk away confidently, knowing that he's taking those fears and he's turning them in for something really good. And so I've been able to observe and experience God just repositions me better whenever those things happen in life, whether it's personal or professional. And so I'm just now, at a point where I'm continuing to trust him and I just know he has my back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about your book. Do you use some of these personal stories in your book to help the point to be explained?
Yeah. So there is one particular story that I use as the foundation for the pivot principle. And it's my son's story. I'm just an observer and a participant, aside, what is it? Not a main actress, but a supporting actress.
Well, and as
He
moms, that's what we are, right?
That's right. I'm a supporting actress in this thing. So when he was 15, he was a sophomore in high school, and he had been a basketball player since he was 4 years old. I was a basketball mom and everything that comes with. And as a 15-year-old, he had chores to do around the house. And one day he was sitting at home after school. The lawn had not been mowed in several weeks. His dad, came home and said, "You need to get out there and mow the lawn." And begrudgingly, of course, he's like, "Okay." So, he gets on his shoes and he goes outside and he's mowing the lawn. Well, a couple of days before, it had rained. And so the lawn was still a little bit wet. And as he was mowing the lawn, it was a push mower. He pulled the mower up, and as he pulled the mower back, his foot slipped and went underneath the mower. And so what resulted in that was a partial amputation of his toe box, or the front of his foot. For a basketball player, the front of your foot, the toe box, is your pivot foot, and your pivot foot allows you to change directions. So now, as a result of this accident, he didn't have a 100% pivot foot. He didn't have what was needed to change directions on the court. And that happened in September. And by November, probably by Thanksgiving, he was already talking to me and Dre about getting back on the court. And his doctors had told us, look, he's not going to walk with a straight gait. It's probably going to be too painful to run. He's not going to be able to have a balanced run. And getting on the court again, probably not. But in the course of that, 40 to 60 days, God did a miracle. Not only did he give us that routine that we did every single morning to kind of get him back to normal emotionally, physically, and spiritually, but he healed him. Not that he has his whole foot again, right? But his big toe was saved. He does not have a bone inside his big toe, but his big toe is there, so it can still provide a little bit of stability. And so by Christmas, Anthony had signed up for another basketball league, a church league, and he was running again without any problems whatsoever. In fact, I would say he was probably a little bit faster too. And it was amazing to watch. I mean, that is a real live miracle in front of my face. And I just had to tell everybody. And that's really the basis of the pivot principle, because when I sat down in January after the accident happened in 2019, my spirit just said, okay, so you've written everything down, because I journal everything. And my spirit said, so tell me, what did you learn through the whole process? So I just journaled that. And then the spirit prompted me, what is it about the foot that happened to Anthony? What is it about that foot that makes this story so special? So I remember texting Anthony and I said, which foot did the accident happen on? He said, that was my left foot. I said, what is it about your left foot? Do you do anything with your left foot on the court? And he said, well, that's my pivot foot, Mom. And that's the first time I had ever heard of a pivot foot. And I said, well, what is a pivot foot? He goes, well, we use that to kind of balance ourselves while we're changing directions, or while we're figuring out which direction you're going to be in. And that right there just did it for me. I, at the time, was working for the NBA, so I was already in basketball. So I went to one of the coaches and I said, tell me everything there is to know about this pivot foot and what the pivot foot does. And so what I learned is that a pivot foot has to have a strong foundation. And once you have that strong foundation, then you're able to look in the different directions in which you can go. And then you have to make a split decision about where you're going to go. And then you move forward in that particular direction. That's the simple form of what a pivot is. And my spirit just said, Shelley, you've got a pivot routine on your hand. So I need you to outline, what is this pivot routine? And so the pivot principle is all about the pivot routine. It's 5 daily habits, PIVOT. You can imagine what the P is for. It's just been an amazing journey. God is good. God is good.
Wow. And sometimes it's the most difficult challenges that we experience where we come out with the most creativity and wisdom, because we've been able to gain insight and grow from it and heal from it. And we want to help others to do that. And I love that you're helping others through your book, which I know it's not easy to write a book. I happen to have that experience.
You know this, yes.
And you are in the middle of working. And if I remember right, you were having your own real pivot during that time as well.
Yes, absolutely. So last year, was my last year with the MBA. I was with them for 8 seasons and loved every minute of it, but my time, had passed and it was ready to move on. And so through an unexpected layoff, I was let go in March of last year. And from March until about July, I rested, I prayed, I put a lot of focus into the book and getting the message out. And then, God let me try things out. I'd always wanted to try to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to own my own company. I would love to um, you know, be a speaker on a speaker circuit. I'd love to consult, different businesses or different groups of women and help them with maybe leadership development or change management. And so I was doing all the things, just putting myself out there. And what I quickly realized in last summer is that entrepreneurship is not for sissies at all. It is just not for sissies. And I am a sissy. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Not you, Shelley.
I just really thrive or being around people. I thrive at getting that steady paycheck. Love that. But I really thrive being around people every single day where I can pour into them. And so what I learned last summer is that I'm meant to be in the workplace because God needs us. God needs light in corporations. God needs light at universities. God needs his soldiers, as people in companies. And I'm just one of those soldiers. And that's where I need to be. That's where I just need to be. And so, once I quickly made up my mind, right? I was like, okay, God, you got me. You let me, open up my own LLC. You let me get my own tax forms done. You let me do this, but I don't want to do that. I really want to go back to work. He's like, you sure? I said, I'm sure. We wrestled with this. I said, I'm sure. I'm so ready to go back to work. And these are my top 5 companies where I would love to go. And he is so gracious to me. So in 1 week after I made that decision, I had 3 offers. I had 3 offers, all for full-time role. And then the week after that, I got my next dream job, which was to become a professor at the University of Memphis. So right now, I'm a professor at the University of Memphis at night, teaching graduate students global leadership and strategy. And then during the daytime, I work for a bank and I'm in talent acquisition. And so I am bringing people to the bank and giving them jobs and coaching them on how to interview. And it's the perfect world. It's just the perfect world for me.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
How do you carry your faith into these environments where people may be searching for?
Yeah, I really want to make sure that I'm cognizant of my environment. I really try to wear my discernment hat a lot every day. So when I see that someone has disengaged at work, or if I see that someone's struggling, my role is to approach them and tell them that, I see they're struggling or they're disengaged and I want to help. And it has opened up the door for so many great conversations. And you wouldn't believe the number of private Christians, that are in the workplace because we're taught to separate that from who we are in the workplace. And one of the things I love about the team that I'm on is they don't ask you to separate who you are. And so they are okay with me bringing, my whole self to work. They're okay with me saying, well, God bless you. They're okay with me saying, I'm going to pray for you. They're okay with me bringing someone, into a separate room as long as they're willing and praying for them. I've just been blessed in a great, great atmosphere. Also, another thing that I do in the workplace is I open myself to mentoring people because early talent, younger people need someone to come along beside them And yes, I can teach them a lot about, human resources. I can teach them a lot about business acumen and how to prepare for a meeting, how to answer these questions. But I can also do it in a way to talk about how Jesus would, would lead or would take a meeting or would communicate something. And so it just gives me an opportunity to provide a more holy approach to work. And finally, I just got to say that one of the best things about where I work is they assume positive intent. They literally tell you, look, we assume positive intent. And so instead of doubting people's motives or instead of thinking the worst about people, I'm in an environment where they're assuming the positive things about you. And that's what we're taught, in the Bible. That's what Jesus would do. He would assume positive intent. And even if he knew that your intentions were less than positive, right? He would coach you and mentor you in a way that would have you, you know, understanding where you're wrong or where there's an opportunity to do better. And so that's just kind of how I approach every day is helping other people maximize who they are, their purpose in the world, how much impact they can make on other people, and show them the Jesus way.
Mm, that's beautiful. Yeah. So many listeners may be in a season where they feel stuck or overwhelmed. What encouragement would you give someone who feels like they're in a valley season?
One, I want them to communicate with God, even if they don't have a good relationship or a deep relationship with the Father, just talking out loud to him and letting him know that you feel alone or that you're walking in the valley and you just feel like no one is here to help you. Just speaking that or even thinking it out loud and directing it towards the Father does something. Because what it does is it will help send angels, send people, into your path that can help you. So that's one communication path. But the other communication path is I really want people who are going through chaos or change or uncertainty to talk to other people. We have a tendency sometimes when things are uncertain or we're scared to withdraw and not tell people. And because we don't know what they're gonna think about us, or they've got their own problems. They're not gonna wanna hear about mine. People thrive whenever they're around other people. So I want people who, are in that valley to know that there are people who want to help and there are people who want to, guide you and to give you the tools and the resources and the connections that you need to get out of the valley. But we're not mind readers. So please tell us. Please tell us and don't be afraid, of what we're going to say because we want the best for you.
Mhm.
And so communication to two people, the Father and somebody else.
I like that because I think the enemy wants us to assume isolation and then that's a workshop for him to get in our head and we don't need that. We
No.
need that wisdom and that light to come in when we are in a dark valley. So thank you for sharing that wisdom yourself,
Yeah.
especially for the listener who is in a pivot, in a change. Is there a moment in your life where you saw God move so clearly that it changed the way you trusted him forever?
I mean the healing of my son really really has to be the moment that I I don't even want to think about my 20s and all the things that I was open to. And for him to change things so quickly, almost overnight, and tell me that I'm still chosen and I'm still his daughter and he still loves me and he knows exactly what I've done. He knows all the poor choices I made and he still chose me and he still loves me and he still, wrote my name in the book, right? He still has an address for me, with a beautiful room in heaven. I mean, it's all there. That's just huge. And so that that moment from 27 to 28 and being reintroduced to him really taught me that I can lean on him, and it got me through my 30s and it got me through my 40s, and that's just really been it's just really been the ultimate pivot, I guess, pivot moment for me. Yeah.
And it's just so refreshing to hear that honesty. And we
Mhm.
need more truth in our world more today than ever, I feel like.
Yeah. I can relate to so many people because of who I was and who I am. And hopefully that helps people, because I can tell them about all the things, that I have been through and I understand.
Yeah.
I don't look like it. You don't look like what you've been through, you
Right?
know, because we always look like we're full of joy and because we are, right?
Yeah.
But
It's a
it wasn't
deep, deep joy, right?
it wasn't always like this. It wasn't always like this. But, the past 20, 30 years have been pretty good. Yeah.
Thank you, Jesus, right?
That's
Yeah.
right.
You often talk about finding beauty even in difficult situations. How has God shown you that strength can grow from hardship?
Let's talk about a layoff. A layoff is like such an uncertain time in someone's life. But I tell people that I coach, I know you're in the valley season now, but I promise you he has planted flowers. So let's look for flowers. And they think I'm crazy when I use that metaphor, but I'll say, okay, you've been laid off, but what have you always been wanting to do that you never have time to do? And they'll tell me, and well, what's stopping you from doing it now? You know, I know you need to look for a job, but you're telling me you haven't been able to rearrange your closet, you know, and dig in there. It can be very, what is it? Cathartic?
Therapeutic.
Yeah. Yes. Very therapeutic to clean out a closet. So, do it now. Put on some praise music, some great music while you do that, and then go back to looking for a job. But there are all sorts of ways to find flowers in the valley. Another one I can think of, that people don't often consider, in a time of like a layoff is reach out to a friend. You never have time to talk to your friends. You never have time to spend with your family. You have time now. You never have time to go to the doctor to take care of yourself. You have time now. Use your time wisely. And the pivot routine gives people an actual formula for how they can use their day when they're in a valley season. And so when you have that formula, every day is intentional. And when every day is intentional, God can work through that. Because remember, He needs us to do our part. Yes, He's going to orchestrate some things, but He doesn't expect us to just sit back on our laurels and just let Him do everything. We have to be willing to do the work as well. And so doing the pivot routine, particularly in a valley season, really does set the tone for intentionality and purposeful living. Purposeful waiting.
Yes. So, who is your ideal reader, your ideal avatar for this book?
Yeah. Our friend Brian, he will not let me say everyone. So I won't say everyone. I think my avatar, my perfect person for this particular book or theme of change and uncertainty is going to be moms and professional moms, because they have children who hurt themselves or they have student athletes. Moms not only go through changes themselves, but they experience the change of their family, right? A wife and a mom of a husband who gets laid off, she's experiencing the change, even though it happened to him. A mom or a wife or parent of a student athlete who gets benched or who has an accident like Anthony, she didn't experience it, but she's the person who observes and takes care of everybody. So I think moms, wives in 25 to about 55, that's probably the perfect range all the change is happening, in those decades. But it's not to say it's not for every other leader or every other, person on the planet who experiences change. But if I had to drill down, that's where I would put it.
This is the exact book I needed during COVID.
I will tell you, by 2020, I had the pivot routine. So I was teaching it by 2020. And in 2020, that was one of my best years. Oh my gosh. Even though, we all got sent home and we worked from home. But I was so productive that year and in 2021 because I had the routine. If I hadn't had the routine, the 5 things to do every day, I'd be a little bored or I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't be as intentional as I was. I was just super intentional. It was a great year
Yeah. Yeah.
for
And it
me.
makes all the
For
difference in the world. Like, I mean, I'm a creature of habit. I love a planner. I love a list.
Yes.
And I mean, I can distract my way through a day and not get anything done.
Yeah,
But
that's
I'm
right.
so much more happier if I can stick to a list, be intentional, focus. Yes. I
Yeah.
just have clarity of mind. Love.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
I'm all
absolutely.
about a self-help book. So I'll be ordering your book.
Yay.
Yes, no doubt. Love it. Well, okay. Is there anything else that you would like to tell that person who is considering writing a book? Because I feel like our listener now is looking at Dr. Shelley Kemp and thinking, how is she doing it all? She's working full time. She's written a book. She's launching it and doing the book tour, wanting to speak on stages. There's a lot going on. You would have to have a routine to get it all done. Tell us about that.
Gosh. I think the one thing I would say to anyone who wants to do it all, right, and write a book on top of that is nothing happens overnight. You have to give yourself grace to grow. And like I didn't become a speaker overnight. I remember the first time I spoke, Facebook just reminded me the other day, the first time I spoke was in 2021. It was at a leadership conference, and it was the first time I spoke about the pivot principle. You have to evolve and you have to give yourself time to evolve. We're talking about, the last 7 or 8 years of my life. It didn't happen overnight for me to be able to do everything. And, in the meantime, I went to college and got another degree and did all these things. So you have to know what season you're in, setting your priorities. Maybe a month at a time or a quarter of a time is a really good way to kind of manage what your priorities are and give yourself time. Do not rush yourself. When you rush, you make the wrong decisions. Yeah, when you rush, you make the wrong decisions. And then you don't give time to God for God to tell you what to do next, If you know anything about God, he gives you enough manna for today. Give us today our daily bread, right? Not give us today our bread for the next month or our bread for the next year, because I'm gonna want to put that in a storehouse, right? Give us today our daily bread. He gives us enough just for today. And so don't plan so far out that you leave him out and you leave out his bread, because he has good stuff for you. Um, and then give it all to him. Say, yes, this is all that I want to do. I want to accomplish this. Make your list. Girl, I have so many lists. But then at the end of the day, I'm like, God, this is my list. This is all the things that I want to do. If I won $1 million, this is what I would like to do with $1 million. But then I give it all to him and I'm like, if you think that I need $1 million and I can accomplish some stuff, you'll give it to me. But I just give him everything. I just give him everything. And I tell him everything so that he can direct me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so refreshing. We've lived enough life where we have a little wisdom to give back and help the next generation of spouses, moms, career women, whatever it is that are coming up behind us. So I love your drive, and hopefully we'll get you some readers from this podcast.
Yeah.
But
Let's do it.
I do have one last question. If someone's listening today and is struggling with change or uncertainty, what truth about God that you haven't mentioned would you want them just to hold on to?
I'm looking at my phone right now because I don't wanna misquote this one verse that I love, Psalm 77:11. It says, "I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago." What I wanna say is that God is the God of miracles, and He did miracles in the past. They're in the Bible, and if He did them in the past, He's doing them now, and He's gonna do it in the future. And so trust Him. He's going to bring a miracle to you when you need it, not before you need it and not after you need it. It's going to be right on time because that's what kind of God He is. And I just want people to know that, He's a loving father. He loves His daughters and His sons, and He performs miracles when we exactly need them. And don't ever, ever, ever doubt that. And if you do, pick up the Bible and start reading because there are reminders of His miracles.
He keeps his promises. He's a good daddy, and the Bible is
Yes.
like a love letter from him. Some people say, "Oh, I just don't understand the Bible." Just ask him to help you understand it. He'll speak to you in miraculous ways and when you least expect it, right?
Absolutely. That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I want to mention your website and where our listeners can find you and hear you. But Shelley's website is her name, Shelley Kemp with an EY, SHELLEYKEMP.com. And you can
Yes.
find her on Facebook, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. She's also on Substack. And yeah, so, and if you want to share your handles with us on Instagram and Facebook, is it just your name?
It is just my name, or on Instagram, it's the Pivot Principle. Yeah, and LinkedIn, put the title in there because I paid a lot for that title, Dr. Shelley Kemp.
Yes. Now, what is your doctorate in?
Yeah, my doctorate is in instructional and curriculum design, so I just like to create programs for people. Yeah,
Dr. Shelley Kemp. Thank you so much for being with us, Shelley.
great. Thank you so much, Carrie. I appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you.